I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Angela. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold as she said, "Mom, we're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And she hung up just like that. 45 years raising her, sacrificing for her, and she discarded me like garbage. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I had become a widow 6 months ago. My husband, Robert, had passed away from a heart attack while we were eating breakfast, just as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he brought coffee with cream and toast, kissed my forehead, and said the same tender words that began our days. Those were his last words. Since then, Angela had been more present in my life, or so I believed. She came to visit 3 times a week. She helped me with the funeral arrangements and accompanied me to the grocery store. She even suggested I see a doctor for a general checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with that smile I thought was love, but now I understood was for convenience. The beach house had been our sanctuary for years. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15 with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we'd go there building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Angela would bring her boyfriends and later her husband, Edward. I would cook for everyone, clean and do the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought she'd see it as just money. And the car, that old Ford pickup truck Robert cared for like his own child. He'd wash it every Sunday, change the oil religiously, and always park it in the same spot under the shade of the tree. Angela knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last thing I had left of him. His scent still lingered on the seats. When she hung up, I stayed there on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other sick people, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something shifted inside me, a steadiness I had not felt since Robert was gone. A quiet certainty rose in my chest, because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, put this in the drawer of your dresser. If something happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had put it away without much thought. After the funeral, with so much grief and so many arrangements, I simply forgot. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me to go into the office. The doctor examined me and said I was in good health for my age, that I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Angela's voice, and how Edward was probably behind all of it. He had never liked me. He always saw me as a nuisance. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Angela, but as I waited I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about all of this. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that Robert, my dear Robert, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by. The houses, the stores, people rushing everywhere, all with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had my own too, and I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel there were several documents inside. Robert had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside would change everything. What I found in that envelope took my breath away. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. "My dear Antonia, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house. We have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also have shares in 3 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You always were rich, but now you are on paper, too. My hands trembled as I looked through the documents. There were deeds to houses in different city neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small motel on the coast, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, but had put everything in the name of a company I didn't know about, and according to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed with numbers that seemed unreal. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very smart investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence, and I never knew anything. In the letter, Robert explained that he had kept it all a secret because he didn't want me to worry about money or for Angela to know about our real financial situation. You know, our daughter Antonia, if she knew we had so much money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have. What irony. Our daughter had left us thinking we had nothing when in reality we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, letting my fingers brush over the old furniture and the little ornaments Angela always said belonged in another century. I paused in front of the photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5, laughing in Robert's lap. Where had that innocent child gone? When did she turn into someone so cold, so calculating? The next morning, the phone rang. It was Angela again. Her tone was softer this time, almost sweet, but I had already learned that her voice could shift like the weather. "Mom, how are you? I just wanted to let you know we've transferred the money from the house and the car. Your share's already in your account. It's not much, but it should cover you for a few months while you find something smaller." "My share?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, Mom. We weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the rest for our investment in Europe. Edward found an amazing opportunity over there. 30% of what was mine. How generous." "I see, honey. And when do you leave?" "This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe longer if things go well. Don't worry, Mom. When we come back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs." Fits my needs, as if she knew what those were. "Okay, Angela. Have a safe trip." "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much." And she hung up. I stood there holding the phone. Then, unexpectedly, I laughed. It wasn't the gentle laugh of amusement, but one born of disbelief. The whole thing was absurd. My daughter had stolen from me, thrown me aside, and still managed to sound proud of herself. 45 years of devotion, sacrifice, and unconditional love, erased in 2 minutes. The money didn't matter as much as the cruelty behind it. I checked my bank account online. There it was, a deposit that probably looked generous in her eyes but felt like mockery in mine. They had sold the beach house for far less than its worth, desperate for quick cash. Robert's truck, his pride and joy, had gone for almost nothing. That afternoon, I stood by the window, watching them load their suitcases into a cab. Edward heaved 2 large suitcases into the trunk. Angela carried an expensive-looking bag, the kind she used to say was too flashy for our taste. They were laughing, kissing, full of excitement, as if heading for a honeymoon. They never looked toward my window. They never said goodbye. When the cab disappeared down the street, I sat in the kitchen, tea steaming beside me, Robert's documents spread neatly across the table. The calm returned. I had a choice now, to stay the grieving widow, or to become something else entirely. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my life, and take back everything that rightfully belonged to me. But something inside me whispered that there was a better way to handle all this, something more meaningful than anger or revenge. I wanted to teach a lesson, not start a war. I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had managed Robert's affairs. He had been kind at the funeral, offered his condolences, and told me to reach out if I ever needed help. Well, that moment had arrived. "Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm doing well, Mr. Peterson. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Robert that I don't fully understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there." That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. I dreamed of Robert sitting in his favorite chair, reading the morning paper. When he looked up at me, he smiled and said, It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself. I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't happiness, not exactly, but it wasn't grief either. It was determination, quiet, steady, and new. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a purpose. I was going to reclaim what was mine, but not the way Angela expected. The next morning, I dressed carefully. I chose my wine-colored dress, the one Robert always said made me look dignified. I brushed my hair, added a touch of makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw her again, the woman I used to be. Strong, calm, certain. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, in an old but graceful building with marble floors and tall glass windows. He greeted me warmly, but when I handed him Robert's documents, his expression shifted from polite curiosity to astonishment. "Mrs. Brooks, this is far more than I expected. Your husband was an exceptionally wise man. Look here, according to these papers, you are the owner of I Know Mr. Peterson. I've reviewed them. What I need to know now is what I can do legally." He examined the documents carefully and assured me everything was valid. The properties, the accounts, the company, everything had been properly transferred. I was the rightful owner of it all. Then he confirmed what I already suspected. The sale of the beach house had been illegal. Angela had no authority to sell it. We can reclaim it immediately, Mrs. Brooks, and we can also pursue legal action against your daughter for fraud. No, Mr. Peterson, that won't be necessary. I want to handle this in a different way. Quietly. I want everything to remain a secret, at least for now. Can you help me? He studied my face for a moment, curiosity flickering behind his glasses, then nodded. Of course, Mrs. Brooks. You're my client. Tell me what you need. I need you to quietly reclaim the beach house, do everything required to cancel that fraudulent sale, and help me secure ownership of all my properties, especially the apartment building where my daughter lives. I understand. It will take a few weeks, but it's entirely possible. Perfect. And Mr. Peterson, no one can know I'm involved, not yet. When I left his office, it felt like waking up from a long, heavy dream. The city was buzzing around me, cars honking, people rushing to work, the world moving forward as if nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had. I finally had a plan. The next few weeks became the strangest period of my life. To everyone else, I was just a poor widow abandoned by her only child. But secretly, I was a woman of wealth, quietly reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Mr. Peterson worked efficiently, updating me every few days as each legal step moved forward. I chose to stay in my house despite what Angela might have expected. It was still my home, after all. Each morning, I followed the same gentle routine: breakfast at the table where Robert and I had shared thousands of mornings, then a slow walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors would greet me with that delicate mix of pity and curiosity, the kind reserved for those whose lives have recently fallen apart. One afternoon, Aurora, my neighbor for more than 40 years, came over while I was watering the front garden. "Antonia, dear, is it true Angela went to Europe and left you alone?" "Yes, Aurora, she went with Edward. They have business plans overseas. And how will you manage, sweetheart? Everyone says Robert didn't leave you much. If only you knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Aurora. I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring dinner or help with groceries." "That's kind of you, but truly I'm fine." She looked at me with that familiar expression, a mix of compassion and quiet relief that my tragedy wasn't hers. "Well, you know where to find me if you need help, dear." These exchanges repeated daily: the butcher, the baker, the woman at the corner store, all spoke in that soft tone people use when they think someone has lost everything. I would smile, thank them, and play my part. But inside, a part of me was amused, because while they pitied me, I was silently regaining control of my entire life. It felt like living two lives at once, one visible to the world, lonely, fragile, pitied, and another hidden beneath it, steady and quietly powerful. One Wednesday morning, Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. We've successfully nullified the sale of the beach house. The buyers were unaware of the fraud, so they were refunded without issue. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson. And the building where Angela lives? That one's more complex," he said. "Technically, you've always owned it through the company, but we'll need to make some administrative adjustments so you can have direct control. It should take about 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me updated." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around my cup of coffee, thinking about Angela. She had been gone 3 weeks now. No calls, no messages, not even a postcard. To her, I had disappeared the moment she got what she wanted. But that would soon change. That afternoon, I decided to visit the beach house. I took the same coastal bus Robert and I had ridden countless times before. The road curved along the ocean, the sea glinting under the sunday. When I arrived, the house stood there exactly as I remembered. Small, cream-colored, its porch facing the water. The new owners had added potted plants on the steps, but everything else looked untouched, as if time had paused. I sat across the street, watching it for nearly an hour. Memories flooded back Angela as a child, running barefoot in the sand, shouting with laughter while Robert grilled fish on the porch. I could almost smell the salt in the air, hear the clinking of plates, the waves against the shore. Later, Angela brought friends, then boyfriends, then Edward. All those summers of love and laughter reduced to a line on a sales contract. An older gentleman stepped out of the house and noticed me. He walked closer, polite curiosity in his eyes. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you, just remembering." I knew the previous owners. "Ah," he nodded slowly. "Such a pity what happened. We were told the elderly lady was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought we were helping. But then we found out the sale wasn't legal, so we had to give the house back." "Did you know them personally?" "No, everything was handled through agents. They said the daughter was managing things because her mother couldn't." What a sad story. If only you knew how sad, I thought. "Well, I'm glad you didn't lose any money. Yes, luckily it worked out. Though we'll have to find another home now. We really loved this place." I left the coast with a heavy heart. It wasn't the property or the lies that stung the most. It was the realization of how easily my daughter had erased me, how naturally she had turned love into a transaction. She had invented an illness for me, using my supposed frailty as her excuse. In her mind, I wasn't a person with feelings or history. I was simply an obstacle in her way. That night, I called Mr. Peterson again. "Mr. Peterson, I need your help with something else. I want Robert's truck back too." "That will be harder, Mrs. Brooks," he said gently. "The truck was registered under your name, but your daughter held power of attorney that allowed her to sell it." "How is that possible?" "Apparently, you signed the authorization a few months after your husband's passing. Don't you remember?" And there it was, the moment Angela had started her scheme. I vaguely remembered her showing me some papers, telling me they were needed for inheritance and funeral matters. I was drowning in grief and signed them without question. How blind I had been. "I understand, Mr. Peterson. Is there any way to recover it? We can try, but it will be more difficult. We'd need to prove you signed those papers under false pretenses or manipulation." "Then let's do it. I want back everything they took from me." Over the following weeks, my days fell into a strange rhythm. In the mornings, I played the part of the grieving widow. I chatted with neighbors, bought groceries, and lived the role everyone expected. But every afternoon, I became someone else, a businesswoman. I went through Robert's files, spoke with Mr. Peterson, studied financial reports, and planned my next move. I began to see the brilliance in Robert's quiet work. Every investment had been deliberate, every decision patient and wise. The building where Angela lived, for example, wasn't just profitable, it sat in a neighborhood rising in value by the day. And that was not the only revelation. I discovered that Edward was deeply in debt. He had taken out loans, using their apartment as collateral, unaware it wasn't really theirs to offer. When the banks realized the truth, he would face a disaster of his own making. One Friday morning, Mr. Peterson called again, his tone bright. "Mrs. Brooks, the paperwork is complete. You now have full control over every property. And the truck, it's back in your name." The buyer turned out to be a friend of mine. Once I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a modest sum. "Excellent work, Mr. Peterson. Now, I need your help with one last thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter." "What kind of letter, ma'am?" "An eviction notice." There was a pause, long and uneasy. "Mrs. Brooks, are you certain about this?" "Absolutely. She decided I no longer mattered. Now she'll see just how much I do." "I understand. Should I send it to her address in Europe?" "No. I want you to hand it to her when she returns." I have a feeling that moment is coming very soon. And I was right. That same afternoon, Aurora hurried over with her usual breathless excitement. Antonia, have you heard? Edward's in trouble with the bank. My brother-in-law works there, and he said they're investigating some loans Edward took out using the apartment as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't even his. Really? Yes, and apparently Angela didn't know. Word is, she'll have to come back from Europe to clean up the mess. What a tangled situation, I said. Aurora nodded gravely. The worst part is Edward lied to her about the business in Europe. There was no business at all. He just wanted to escape the debts he piled up here. Perfect, I thought. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. Angela had put her faith in him, turned her back on me for him, and now she was seeing the truth. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the stars. Robert used to say they were the souls of people who had lived their lives fully, still watching over those they loved. If that was true, then he was up there, smiling down, watching everything fall into place just as he planned. Thank you, my love, I whispered. Thank you for protecting me, even from beyond. Early the next morning, Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Brooks, I have news. Your daughter just arrived back in the country. She's at the airport alone. Alone? Yes. It seems Edward stayed behind in Europe. There are rumors of a terrible argument between them. I see. Did you send the letter? I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly. After so many weeks of quiet preparation, the first real step was finally here. Angela was about to learn that her mother was far from helpless. Angela arrived at her apartment on Tuesday night. I didn't have to guess. Aurora, ever the neighborhood messenger, came by to report. Antonia, your daughter came back last night. She only had one suitcase, and she looked awful pale, with dark circles under her eyes like she'd cried all the way home. Alone. Completely alone. And you know what's strange? When the doorman asked for her keys, she didn't have them. She had to ask the superintendent to let her in with the spare. Interesting, I thought. Edward must have kept the keys, which likely meant he had no plans to return. Or perhaps Angela had discovered something so terrible that she fled without him. Either way, my daughter was home again, and soon she'd receive my little welcome gift. That afternoon, Mr. Peterson called once more. Mrs. Brooks, the letter has been delivered. The doorman confirmed your daughter received it in person just an hour ago. Perfect, I said. Everything was happening exactly on time. How long did we give her? 30 days to vacate the apartment, as the law requires. But Mrs. Brooks, are you absolutely sure about this? She's still your daughter. Mr. Peterson, my daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my belongings without permission. She treated me like I was disposable. Now, she's going to learn that every action carries a consequence. I understand, he said quietly. I just wanted to be certain you had thought it through. I have, Mr. Peterson, every single part of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake picturing Angela's reaction as she unfolded the letter. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally, panic. She'd likely assume it was some kind of mistake or even a scam. But once she made a few calls, she'd learn that everything was completely legitimate. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Angela. Her voice trembled, tight with fear. Mom, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Good morning, dear. How was Europe? Mom, please, I don't have time for small talk. I got a strange letter yesterday. It says I have to move out of my apartment within 30 days. That can't be right, can it? You haven't heard anything about this, have you? An eviction notice? How strange. Who sent it? A company I've never heard of. Hold on, let me check the letter. Robert Investments Incorporated. Do you know this company? My heart skipped for a moment. Robert had named the company after himself, a perfect touch of irony. No, sweetheart, I've never heard of them. Are you sure it's not some kind of mistake? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Mom. I'm so scared. Edward left me in Europe. He disappeared with another woman, and now I've come home to this. I don't understand what's happening. There it was, the truth. Edward had abandoned her, probably when the money dried up or when he realized the legal trouble waiting for him back home. Poor Angela. She had traded her family's love for a man who never cared. I softened my tone. I'm sorry, honey. Where are you now? I'm still in the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I really need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony made me almost smile. After losing the man she had chosen over me, she suddenly remembered she still had a mother. Of course, honey. Come whenever you like. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. This meeting would require precision. I chose my most modest gray dress, tied my hair neatly into a bun, and practiced the look of a worried but patient mother. When Angela walked in, she would see what she expected to see: a fragile, lonely widow who had been betrayed by life and her own child. An hour later, I opened the door. The sight of her caught me off guard. She was pale and thin, with dark circles under her eyes and clothes that once screamed luxury now rumpled and dull. Her voice trembled when she said, "Mom." For a second I thought she might hug me, but she froze halfway, as if the memory of her betrayal stopped her. "Come in, dear. Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where weeks earlier I had uncovered Robert's secrets. Angela looked small in that chair, shrunken by exhaustion and regret. It reminded me of her as a little girl, coming to me after school with teary eyes, confessing a mistake. "Mom, I'm so sorry for what I did. I know I treated you terribly. It's in the past, honey." "No, it's not," she insisted. "I said awful things, and now—" Her voice cracked. "Now I have no one." "What happened with Edward?" I asked gently. "He left," she said. "With a 25-year-old waitress from a hotel in Paris. There was never any business deal. It was all a lie. He just wanted to run from his debts and use the money from selling your house to live his little fantasy." "All the debts?" "Yes, Mom, so many. He had been taking out loans for years, using our apartment as collateral. But now I've learned it was never his to use." "How could that be?" I asked, feigning confusion while hiding my satisfaction. "I don't know," she said helplessly. "Property laws are so complicated. And now the banks are after me for his debts because we were married. They say I'm liable for everything. And then this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money, no job, nowhere to go." She began to cry, real tears this time, raw and human. For a moment, the mother in me stirred. I wanted to reach across the table, hold her, tell her everything would be all right, but I didn't. Not yet. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called me from the doctor's office, and the ease with which she had discarded me. She had spoken as if I were a burden, as if my life could be traded for convenience. "Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter?" "I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent everything in Europe and Edward took what was left." "So what will you do now?" Angela asked, voice small and pleading. I kept my tone gentle, measured, and let her believe I was helpless. I listened as she proposed staying with me for a short while, until she found work and could afford a modest place. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. After selling my life, she asked me to rescue hers. "Of course, honey, you can come here," I said, and she sounded surprised that I answered so easily. "You are my daughter," I told her, and that would never change. She stood up and wrapped me in a desperate hug, the kind of embrace someone clutches when drowning. I returned it, but my arms held more than comfort. There was a quiet calculation under the softness. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered, promising to find a job and not be a burden. I asked her to rest and recover first. Later, she left to collect a few things from her apartment while I sat at the kitchen table, watching how naturally she had fallen into the role I had arranged. She had come to me broken and unaware. This was only the opening move of a longer plan I had set in motion. I intended to let her settle, feel sheltered, and believe she had found refuge here. Then, when the moment was right, she would learn the difference between choosing to be poor and becoming poor by consequence. That night I called Mr. Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, I need you to do something else for me. Tell me, Mrs. Brooks, I want you to investigate Edward's debts. I want a full audit, every creditor and every loan, and I want legal ways to separate those obligations from my daughter's name so she won't be dragged down by his lies. That will take time and discretion, I know, and I want no whisper of this to leak out. Keep it confidential, Mr. Peterson. No one must know I am behind this investigation. Of course, Mrs. Brooks, may I ask what your final plan is?" "My plan, Mr. Peterson, is very simple. I'm going to save my daughter, but first she needs to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom. When I hung up, I opened the bottle of wine Robert had been saving for special occasions. It had been years since I'd allowed myself to celebrate anything, but this moment deserved it. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I held every winning card. Angela moved into my house the next morning, carrying 2 suitcases and a worn cardboard box, the last fragments of her old life. I watched her unpack in her childhood room, and in each careful motion, I saw the weight of humiliation pressing down on her. She had gone from a luxury apartment to the same small room she'd painted pink as a teenager. "Mom, I found this in the apartment," she said, showing me a manila envelope. It was among Edward's things. "It has your name on it." My heart skipped. Another one of Robert's envelopes. "My name? How strange," I said. "Yes, look." She handed it to me. It was smaller and newer than the one I had found before, but unmistakably written in Robert's handwriting. "Maybe Edward found it among Dad's papers and forgot to give it to you." "It's possible," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Can I open it?" Inside was a brief note and a small key. The letter read, "Antonia, if you are reading this after having received the main envelope, it means our daughter is facing a difficult time. This key belongs to a safety deposit box at the Central Bank, Downtown Branch, number 247. Inside, you'll find something that can help you help her. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Angela read the letter over my shoulder. A safety deposit box? Dad had one? "I never knew." "Neither did I lied. "Your father never mentioned it. Do you think we should go see what's inside?" I hesitated deliberately. "I'm not sure, honey. Maybe it's best to leave things as they are." "But Mom, what if it's something important? Papers, money, anything that could help us?" Her voice cracked with hope. She was desperate, clinging to even the faintest chance. I let the silence stretch before nodding. "All right, we'll go tomorrow." That night, we had dinner together for the first time in months. Angela cooked, trying to prove her worth, but the meal tasted of regret and exhaustion. As we ate, she began to talk about Europe, every detail darker than the last. Edward lied about everything, Mom, about the business, the money, even the debts. I thought he only owed a small amount, but it turns out he owes more than $100,000. And the worst part is he used my name for some of the loans without me knowing. How could that happen? He forged my signature. When we married, I gave him some documents to handle our joint banking. I never imagined he'd use them to ruin me. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I don't know. Everything is such a mess. The banks say that because we were married, I'm legally responsible for his debts. And the divorce? I have no idea where he even is. He vanished. His phone's disconnected. He ignores emails, nothing. It's like he disappeared from the earth. Perfect, I thought. Edward had fled just as I expected, leaving Angela to face the wreckage alone. In a twisted way, he'd done me a favor. Now my daughter knew what betrayal felt like, what it meant to be left broken by someone you trusted completely. "I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't realize things were that bad." "I didn't either, Mom. I thought Edward loved me, that we were building a life together, but I was just his way to money and documents." Her tears came again, heavy and raw. How could I have been so blind? How didn't I see what he was? I wanted to tell her I'd seen through him from the start, that I'd warned her, that her arrogance had deafened her, but I couldn't. My role now was the gentle, forgiving mother. "Love can blind us, sweetheart. Don't blame yourself." "But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you horribly. I took your house, your truck, your things, all for a man who abandoned me the moment it suited him. Now we're just 2 poor women trying to survive. It's all in the past, Angela. We'll be all right." "No, we won't," she said through tears. "You lost everything Dad left you, and I lost my marriage and my future. We're 2 poor women trying to survive because of me, if only she knew." At that very moment, I owned more than she could dream of. I was the landlord of the very building she had once claimed as hers. With a single phone call, I could have erased all her problems. But not yet. The next morning we went to the bank. Angela was nervous, clinging to hope. I maintained my mask, the confused widow, out of her depth with financial matters. The bank clerk led us through a long corridor, checked my ID, and opened box number 247. Inside was a velvet-lined tray filled with jewels, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. Some I recognized as family heirlooms from Robert's side. Others were new to me, sparkling like frozen light. There was also a letter cataloging each piece, its history, and its approximate value. Angela's breath caught. "Mom, this must be worth a fortune." "You think so?" "Yes, look at this emerald, and this pearl necklace, Mom. Dad saved a treasure here." According to Robert's letter, the jewels were worth about $200,000. It was a generous sum, though small compared to the rest of my holdings. Like finding a handful of coins beneath the couch when you already had a fortune waiting quietly in the bank. "What should we do with this, Mom?" "I don't know, honey. These are family heirlooms." "But Mom, we could sell some. With that money, you could get your beach house back, and I could start paying Edward's debts." There it was again, her instinct to fix Edward's mistakes before her own. Even in desperation, she hadn't yet learned. "Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay for Edward's failures?" "What other choice do I have, Mom? If I don't pay soon, the banks will take everything. And technically, I don't even own anything. Everything was under Edward's name. Think about it carefully, Angela. Once these pieces are sold, there's no getting them back." "I know, but I can't find a job while all this is hanging over me. No company wants someone tied up in lawsuits and debt." We brought the jewels home, and Angela spread them across the kitchen table. She examined each one with trembling hands, deciding which to sell and which to keep. It was painful to see her reduce a lifetime of memories into numbers and market value. "Mom, I think I can get $180,000 for these," she said one afternoon, counting the stacks of bills on the table. "It's less than I hoped, but it'll be enough to cover the most urgent debts." "Are you sure this is what you want?" "I don't have a choice, Mom. If I don't pay now, they'll seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they connect me to those properties." The irony wasn't lost on me. Angela was terrified of losing a house that legally belonged to me, paying off the debts of a man who had abandoned her, using the jewels left by the very man who had built the fortune that could have saved her. "And how are you deciding which debts to pay first?" I asked. "I met with a free financial advisor at the bank," she explained. "She told me to focus on the loans with collateral, those tied to property or assets. They're the ones that can cause immediate foreclosure." I listened silently. Angela had changed. The careless daughter who once sold my belongings without asking was now methodical, cautious, painfully aware of consequences. The suffering had taught her discipline, but drained her spirit. That evening, as she spread the debt papers across the table, I received a call from Mr. Peterson. "Mrs. Brooks, I have completed the report on Edward's debts. The situation is worse than I expected." "How much worse?" "He owes over $200,000 to several banks and also has debts with private lenders. What's more concerning is that he used falsified documents with your daughter's signature for some of these loans. That means Angela is legally responsible. It's complicated. If we can prove she didn't know, we might be able to get her out of some of the debts. But it's going to be a long and expensive process. How expensive for a good lawyer specializing in these types of cases? Probably $50,000, and there's no guarantee of success." "I understand. And what if she just pays the debts? If she has the money, that would be the fastest solution, but I doubt she has access to that amount." "Mr. Peterson, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to get my daughter out of these debts, but don't tell her anything yet. You're going to pay Mrs. Brooks. I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect my daughter, but this has to be handled in a very specific way." When I hung up, I found Angela in the living room, looking at the jewels with a sad expression. She looked lost, like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. "What are you thinking about, honey? About Dad? About how disappointed he would be in me if he could see what I did with my life? Your father loved you very much, Angela. He would understand." "No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, not to be selfish. And I did the exact opposite. I abandoned my mother for a man who turned out to be a liar. I sold my family's memories for money. I ruined everything he built." For the first time since she had returned, I heard a genuine regret in her voice. It wasn't just lamenting the consequences of her actions, but a true acknowledgement that she had done something morally wrong. "People make mistakes, honey. The important thing is to learn from them." "But how do I learn from this, Mom? How do I fix the damage I've done?" There was the question I had been waiting for. Angela decided to sell most of the jewels, keeping only the engagement ring Robert had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare to go to the jewelry stores, research prices, and negotiate with buyers. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history into cold transactions, but it was necessary for her to feel the true cost of her choices. "Mom, I got $180,000 for the jewels," she said one afternoon, stacking the bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I hoped, but enough to pay the most urgent debts." "Are you sure, Angela?" "I have no choice, Mom. If I don't pay now, they'll foreclose on everything. Even this house could be at risk if they find any connection between me and those properties." How ironic it all was. Angela was terrified of losing a house that legally belonged to me. She was paying the debts of a man who had betrayed her, using money from jewels left by the man who had once built the fortune that could easily have saved her. "And how will you decide which debts to pay first?" I asked. "I spoke with a free financial advisor at the bank," she said. "She told me to focus on the debts with collateral, the ones that could lead to foreclosure." The woman who had once sold my possessions without asking was now reading about interest rates and legal terms, learning the hard way what responsibility meant. Pain had made her wiser, but it had also broken her spirit. That night, while she organized piles of paperwork under a dim light, the phone rang. "Mrs. Brooks," said Mr. Peterson's voice, "I have important news. We've located Edward." "Where?" "In Paris, just as your daughter suspected. But there's more. He's trying to obtain French residency through a fake marriage with that young woman she mentioned." "A fake marriage?" "Yes. Apparently, she needs papers, and he needs a way to stay in Europe without being deported. But the crucial part is that we found evidence he falsified your daughter's documents to flee the country." "So Angela can be cleared of the debts?" "With this proof, yes. We can demonstrate fraud and coercion. She won't owe a cent for what he did." "Perfect. Start the legal process immediately, but don't tell my daughter yet. I don't want her hopes raised until everything is finalized." "Understood, Mrs. Brooks. It'll take about 3 weeks, maybe a month." "Perfect." When I hung up, Angela glanced at me curiously. "Who was that, Mom?" "A neighbor, Mrs. Davis from the corner. She dialed the wrong number. Lying came easier with every passing day." Each deception felt like a small step toward justice. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Angela wrestle with survival-stretching groceries, negotiating with creditors, applying for jobs despite a ruined credit history. It was cruel, yes. But only through that struggle could she finally understand the worth of what she'd once thrown away. "Mom, I went to 3 job interviews today," she told me one evening as she came home, her feet swollen and her face pale with exhaustion. "2 of them said they couldn't hire me because of the legal problems," she murmured. "The 3rd offered me a part-time job cleaning offices at night." "Are you going to take it?" I asked. "I have no choice, Mom. It doesn't pay much, but it's something. I can work nights and keep looking for better jobs during the day." Watching my daughter, who had lived a life of comfort for over 40 years, now preparing to scrub office floors, broke my heart. Yet, beneath that pain, I felt something else: pride. For the first time, she wasn't running from her mistakes. She was standing up to them. "Are you sure you can handle that kind of work, honey?" "I'll have to, Mom. I can't keep being a burden to you. It's already enough that you're letting me stay here for free." "This is your home, Angela." "No, Mom," she said softly. "It's your home. I'm here because of your kindness, but I won't take advantage forever." One evening while Angela was away on her first shift, Aurora stopped by. She sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea, her eyes moving from the steam to the family photos on the wall. "Antonia, I have to ask you something. Did you know she would come back like this?" "Like what?" I asked. When she left, she was so proud, talking about Europe, about Edward's big opportunities. And now she's back, broken, cleaning offices, living here again. "Life has a way of humbling us, Aurora." "Yes," she nodded, "but there's something else. She's changed. I've seen her around. She doesn't walk the same, doesn't talk the same. It's like she's learned something." Aurora had always seen through people easily. "What do you think she's learned?" I asked. "The value of what she took for granted, like a mother who still loves her after everything." "Maybe." Aurora leaned closer. "Can I be honest, Antonia? When Angela left and treated you so coldly, we all thought you'd never forgive her, but here you are, giving her shelter again. She's my daughter Aurora. Yes, but not every mother would do that. Not after what she did. If only she knew the truth that I could erase Angela's debts with a single signature, but chose not to. That I needed my daughter to earn her redemption, not be handed it. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I asked quietly. Aurora thought for a moment. I think you're doing what a good mother would do. But Angela needs to truly understand what she lost when she abandoned you. She has to see you not just as a mother to lean on, but as a woman to look up to. Aurora's words struck deep. That was the heart of my plan. I didn't want Angela's love out of desperation. I wanted her respect, her understanding of who I truly was. And do you think she's learning that? I asked. I think she already is. The way she speaks to you now, it's different. There's gratitude in her voice. She's not the same woman who left. That night, when Angela returned, she looked exhausted but proud. She had earned her small paycheck with her own hands, and it gave her something money couldn't buy: dignity. How was your first day? I asked. Hard, but not as bad as I expected. The other ladies helped me. One of them, Mrs. Johnson, taught me how to clean faster. Mrs. Johnson? Yes. She's 60 years old and has been cleaning offices for 20 years. She told me she started cleaning after her husband left her with 3 small children. It wasn't the life she wanted, but it gave her independence and dignity. She sounds like a wise woman, I said. She is, Angela nodded. She told me something I can't stop thinking about. She said there are 2 types of people who end up doing this job: those who never had opportunities and those who destroyed the ones they had. And what did you tell her? I asked. The truth, Mom, that I had every opportunity: an education, a loving family, a home, an inheritance, and I threw it all away for a man who wasn't worth it. What did she say? Angela gave a small, tired smile. She laughed and said, Asterisk, well, honey, at least you know exactly why you're here. That already puts you 1 step ahead of most people. Asterisk. Angela poured herself a glass of water and sat beside me at the table. Her hands still smelled faintly of cleaning detergent. Mom, I want you to know something. These last few weeks have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. Why, honey? Because I finally understand what matters. It's not money. It's not fancy apartments or vacations. It's love. Real love. The kind that stays when everything else disappears. Angela, I began, but she stopped me gently. No, Mom, let me finish. You had every reason to hate me. I abandoned you when you needed me. I sold what Dad left you. I treated you like a burden. And now I'm here, hoping you'll forgive me and still care for me. I already forgave you, Angela. I said it softly. She shook her head. But I haven't forgiven myself, and I won't until I prove I've changed, until I earn the forgiveness I don't deserve. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Brooks, I have excellent news. The legal process is almost complete. We've cleared your daughter from Edward's debts. I looked out the window at the garden Robert had planted years ago. The sun was rising over the hydrangeas, painting them gold. It was time. After weeks of watching Angela face her demons, work with her hands, and rediscover her soul, the moment had finally come to tell her everything, to show her that she had never been alone. Mr. Peterson, I said calmly, arrange a meeting. It's time for my daughter to know the truth. He scheduled it for Friday morning. I told Angela I'd made an appointment with a lawyer who might help her with her legal problems, but I didn't explain further. She hesitated. Mom, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. I smiled. Don't worry, honey. This one won't charge you a cent. I barely have enough to cover my basic expenses, she whispered. Don't worry about that now, honey. Let's just hear what he has to say. We arrived at Mr. Peterson's office right on time. Angela had dressed in her best clothes, though they hung a little loose on her thinner frame. She sat beside me, nervously twisting her fingers, expecting yet another piece of bad news to add to her growing list of troubles. Mr. Peterson greeted us with his usual calm smile. Mrs. Brooks, Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing us, Angela said politely, though her voice trembled. I should warn you, sir, my financial situation is very complicated, and I probably can't afford high legal fees. That's exactly what we're here to discuss, Mr. Peterson replied, glancing in my direction. But before that, I'd like you to review something." He handed Angela a thick folder. Angela opened it carefully. Her brow furrowed as she read, and slowly her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to astonishment. "I don't understand." "These papers say Edward forged my signature, that there's proof of fraud, that I'm not responsible for his debts." "That's correct," Mr. Peterson said. "We've been investigating your case for several weeks and found enough evidence to clear your name completely." "But how?" she asked. "Who paid for this investigation?" "I don't have money for this." Mr. Peterson looked at me, and I knew it was time. "Angela, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it, Mom?" she asked, her eyes wide. I took a deep breath. After all the pretending, all the quiet planning, the moment had come. "Your father left me far more than you ever knew. Much more." "What do you mean?" she whispered. "Mr. Peterson, please show her the other documents." He pulled out a second folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were the deeds, bank certificates, and investment papers, everything Robert had built in secret. Angela read in silence for several long minutes. I watched her face transform confusion, melting into shock, shock into realization. "Mom, these say you own the building I lived in." "Yes." "And other properties, bank accounts, investments." "Yes." Her voice quivered. "Then that means when I sold the beach house, it wasn't mine to sell. The sale was fraudulent." "I already got it back," I said softly. Angela closed the folder slowly, staring at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. "How long have you known all this?" "Since the day you called me from the doctor's office." "You knew when I came back from Europe begging for help?" "Yes." "You knew you could fix everything while I was crying every night?" "Yes." There was a long, heavy silence between us. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for all along. "Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me?" "Because," I said quietly, "you needed to learn something you would never have understood any other way." "What?" "You needed to learn the true worth of the things you once took for granted, the meaning of family, of respect, of responsibility. When you turned your back on me, you didn't just take my possessions. You took my dignity, my love, and my trust." Her tears began to fall again, but they weren't the same desperate tears I had seen before. These were tears of realization, of growth, of something deeper than regret. "I left you when you needed me the most," she whispered. "Yes, I treated you terribly. Yes, and you still saved me." "Yes," I said softly, "but not in the way you think. I didn't save you by throwing money at your mistakes. I saved you by letting you fall far enough to understand how to climb on your own." Mr. Peterson, who had quietly stayed in the corner, finally spoke. "Miss Reynolds, your mother covered every legal cost to clear your name from Edward's debts. She also recovered every property that was sold illegally. You are free now." Angela looked stunned. "And the job I got cleaning offices? You can quit if you want," I said gently, "but I hope you don't." "Why not?" she asked, confused. "Because that job is giving you something far more valuable than money. It's teaching you the meaning of effort, the pride in earning every dollar with your own hands. It's teaching you what comfort can never teach: gratitude." Angela wiped her tears and looked at me in a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the helpless look of a daughter begging for forgiveness. It was the gaze of a woman who finally understood. "Do you forgive me, Mom?" "I forgave you long ago, honey. The question is, can you forgive yourself?" She hesitated. "I don't know if I can. I did unforgivable things. People make mistakes," I said. "What matters is what we choose to do once we recognize them." Mr. Peterson quietly stepped out, leaving us alone in the office. We sat there in silence, absorbing everything. Then Angela spoke softly. "Even if you weren't wealthy, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson." "What lesson, honey?" "That nothing in this world is worth more than unconditional love. These past few weeks, the only thing that kept me going was knowing I still had a home with you, that no matter how much I'd failed, you were still my mother. That will never change, Angela." "I know," she said. "But now I also know I can never take that love for granted again. I have to earn it with respect, with gratitude, through what I do, not what I say." We walked out of Mr. Peterson's office side by side, no longer just mother and daughter, but two women who had found their way back to each other after the hardest test of their lives. The weeks that followed were about rebuilding, but not in the way she imagined. Even though she knew I had the means to solve everything, she chose to keep her cleaning job. "Mom, I need to finish what I started," she said one evening as she got ready for work. "I can't just slip back into comfort as if nothing happened." "Are you sure, Angela? You don't have to carry this burden forever. It's not punishment," she said softly. "It's a reminder of who I was and who I want to become." I watched her button up her work uniform, something I could never have imagined months earlier when she was living in that sleek apartment with Edward. But there was something different about her now, a quiet strength in the way she stood, the way she tied her hair back. She was no longer the broken woman who had shown up at my doorstep in tears. She had found something deeper than comfort. She had found dignity. That afternoon, Aurora came by as she often did these days. She sat at my kitchen table, stirring her tea, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Antonia, people are saying some rather strange things around the neighborhood." "What sort of things, Aurora?" I asked calmly. "Word is you're not as poor as everyone thought." She leaned closer. "Someone saw Angela leaving a fancy lawyer's office downtown, then heading straight to the bank to clear all her debts." "People talk too much, Aurora." "Maybe," she said, "but they're also saying you got your beach house back and somehow paid off all of Angela's legal troubles. That kind of thing doesn't happen without money." Aurora had known me for 40 years too long to be fooled by half-truths. "What do you really want to ask, Aurora?" "I want to know if my oldest friend has been lying to me all this time." I poured tea into both our cups and sat down across from her. It was time to be honest, at least with one person. Robert left me far more than anyone knew, Aurora. Much more. Her eyes widened. "How much more?" "Enough that neither Angela nor I will ever have to worry about money again." She sat back, quiet for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then she asked softly, "Why pretend to be poor all this time?" "Because Angela needed to learn something she couldn't have learned any other way." So I told her everything. The cruel phone call, my decision to let silence be my answer, the long nights of watching my daughter fall, and the day she finally stood on her own again. Aurora's hand covered her mouth. "Antonia, that's both terrible and brilliant. Terrible because you watched your own daughter suffer when you could have saved her, but brilliant because I understand why you did it." "You do?" I asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "If you had simply given her the money, she'd have learned that someone would always clean up her messes. But this way, she learned what loss really means." "Exactly," I whispered. "But Antonia, didn't it hurt?" "Every single day," I said. "Every night, I heard her crying through the walls. Every morning, I saw her leave exhausted but determined. And yet, I knew if I helped her too soon, she'd never truly change." Aurora looked toward the window, where Angela was just coming home from work. Her hair was messy, her shoes dusty, her uniform wrinkled, but her eyes were steady. "And, do you think she learned it, Antonia?" "Look for yourself," I said softly. "Angela knows that she now has access to enough money to live comfortably, but she still chooses to keep her job. She could move to a nicer home if she wanted, yet she decided to stay here with me. She doesn't have to worry about bills or debts anymore, but instead of spending freely, she's using her own savings to help other women who have faced the same kind of pain she once did." "She's helping other women," I told Aurora. "Yes, she's become close friends with the ladies at work and uses part of her small paycheck to help one coworker who's struggling to pay for her little boy's daycare." Aurora smiled softly. "That doesn't sound like the Angela who went off to Europe." "No, it doesn't. This Angela understands something much deeper, that money is just a tool, not the purpose of life. She knows now that dignity doesn't come from what you own, but from how you carry yourself and how you treat others." That night, when she came home from work, I was reading in the living room. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said. "Today, Mrs. Johnson asked me if I was the daughter of that wealthy lady from the north side of town." "What did you tell her?" I asked. I told her yes, that my mom had enough money for me not to have to work. "And do you know what she asked next?" Angela smiled. "She asked why I was still working. So I told her it's because I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own. And what did she say to that?" She laughed and said, "Honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom taught you how to be truly rich." "Mrs. Johnson is a wise woman," I said. "She is," Angela replied, and she made me realize something important. It's not about how much money you have, but about how you use it and how it shapes your heart. Angela sat beside me on the sofa, her voice calm but firm. Mom, I've made a decision. I want to keep living here with you, but not as a daughter returning home in defeat. I want to stay as a grown woman who chooses to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? I asked. The difference is that this time I'll contribute. I'll pay my share of the bills. I'll help care for the house. I want this to be a home between two independent women who love and respect each other. Angela, you don't have to, I said quietly. Yes, I do, Mom. I need our relationship to be different from what it was before. I used to be a daughter who took your love for granted. Now, I want to be a woman who honors and protects the most important bond in her life, the one between you and me. And your job? I asked. I'm going to keep working, Mom, but not necessarily cleaning offices forever. I want to go back to school. I want to do something that gives meaning to what I've been through. But I'll take it slowly, earning every new opportunity. Do you know what you'd like to study? Yes. I want to study social work. These last few months have opened my eyes to how many women are struggling alone, without help. I want to use what we have to support them, the way you unknowingly supported me. It was everything I had hoped for. Angela hadn't just learned to value what she lost, she had discovered a way to transform her pain into purpose. And what about Edward? I asked. Mr. Pronder. Peterson told me he'd been arrested in France for fraud. He's going to be deported soon, but honestly, Mom, I don't care anymore. That chapter of my life is closed. You don't feel anger? I asked quietly. She shook her head. No, Mom. Edward actually did me a favor. If he hadn't betrayed me, I would never have fallen so far. And if I hadn't fallen, I would never have learned how to rise again. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. My plan had worked, not out of revenge, but out of love. Angela had grown stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Robert would have been so proud of her. 6 months later, our lives had found a new kind of peace, one built on trust and gratitude. Angela had finished her social work studies with excellent grades. I decided to use part of my savings to create a foundation that would help women suffering from financial abandonment and domestic hardship. One morning, Angela came into the kitchen, holding a white envelope. Mom, the letter from the university came. I got accepted into the master's program. I start next semester. I smiled. That's wonderful, honey. But she looked serious. Mom, I want to pay for it myself. I've been saving from my job at the city office. The salary isn't much, but I've learned to live simply. Are you sure? We can easily afford it. She nodded. I know, Mom, but I need to do this on my own. It's part of who I am now. That afternoon, Aurora came by for tea, as she had every Friday since our lives had changed. She had become a dear friend to both of us, a quiet witness to everything that had unfolded. Antonia, I have to admit something, she said while pouring her second cup. At the beginning, I thought you were being very cruel to Angela. And what do you think now? I asked. Now, Aurora said with a soft smile, I think you are the wisest mother I've ever known. Look at your daughter, Antonia. Really look at her. She was right. The young woman sitting in the living room, surrounded by her books, was not the same Angela who had left for Europe chasing illusions. This Angela carried peace in her eyes and confidence in her voice, the kind that grows from humility and perseverance, not from comfort or wealth. Did you know, Aurora continued, I saw Angela at the grocery store yesterday. She was buying vegetables for a family she's helping through her work. I didn't know that. When I asked her why she used her own money instead of her job's budget, she told me that some acts of kindness can't be measured by official accounts. I smiled quietly. That sounded exactly like the new Angela. That evening, she and I had dinner out on the porch, a simple tradition we had come to love. It was our time to talk about the day and share our thoughts. Mom, she said while slicing her salad, I got a strange letter today. From whom? I asked. From Edward. My heart tightened. Edward? He wrote to you? Yes, from a prison in France. He was sentenced to 2 years for the fake marriage. In his letter, he said he regretted everything and wanted my forgiveness. And how do you feel about that? I asked. Honestly, I don't feel anything, she said calmly. No anger, no sadness, no hate. It's like that part of my life happened years ago, to someone else. Are you going to answer him? No, Mom. Not because I'm bitter, but because there's nothing left to say. The woman who once loved him doesn't exist anymore. I listened, moved by the serenity in her words. The woman sitting across from me had grown into someone strong and grounded, shaped by her pain but no longer defined by it. "Do you know what this whole experience taught me, Mom?" she asked. "What, honey?" "That love isn't about comfort or flattery. Real love teaches, even when it hurts. It's not about being told what you want to hear. It's about being shown what you need to understand." Edward told me what I wanted to hear. You, Mom, taught me what I needed to learn, that true wealth is built on effort, respect, and genuine love. Later that night, after Angela went to her room to study, I sat alone on the porch, staring at the stars and thinking about Robert. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and at last, I had done it in the right way. I hadn't protected her by shielding her from pain. I had protected her by letting her grow through it. I hadn't saved her by solving her problems. I had saved her by teaching her how to stand on her own. The next morning was Sunday, and we had planned something special, our first visit back to the beach house since reclaiming it. Angela had avoided going before, saying she wasn't ready. "Are you ready now?" I asked as we climbed into the truck. "I think so," she replied. The drive was quiet but peaceful, filled with the kind of silence that feels safe. When we arrived, Angela stayed seated for a moment, staring at the little house where so many of our happiest memories lived. "It looks just the same," she said softly. "Some things never change," I replied. "But others do. I'm not the same person who sold this place," she whispered. We walked inside together. The house was spotless and warm, exactly the way Robert and I had kept it for all those years. Angela walked slowly through each room, running her fingers along the furniture and pausing at the family photos on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize. You already did, sweetheart." "No, not like this. I want to apologize for this house, not just for selling it, but for treating decades of family memories as if they were a business deal. It's forgiven," I said quietly. She looked around. "This house carries 40 years of birthdays, summers, Christmas mornings. Dad built that porch himself. You planted that garden. I learned to swim in that ocean, and I threw it all away chasing the dream of a man who wasn't worth it." She sat down on the old sofa, the one where Robert used to read the newspaper every Sunday morning. "Do you know what hurts me the most?" she asked. "What, honey?" "That when I sold this house, I felt nothing. It was just a piece of property back then. But now, being here again, I can feel Dad in every room. I can hear his laugh, smell his coffee, see his glasses resting on the table. He's here, Angela. He's always been here." She nodded softly. "I know, and I think he's proud of how you handled all of this." We spent the entire day there, cooking side by side, cleaning, fixing little things around the house. It felt like a quiet ceremony of healing, reconnecting not just with a place, but with the values that made it sacred. When the sun began to fade, we sat on the porch Robert had built, watching the ocean shimmer under the evening light. "Mom, I have an idea," Angela said. "What if we turned this house into a shelter for women leaving abusive relationships, a safe place for them to start over?" It was perfect. Robert would have loved that idea, his beach house serving as a refuge for others. "I think that's beautiful, honey," I said. "We can use part of the foundation's funds to maintain it, and you could manage it through your work." "Are you sure you want to open our family home like that?" she asked. "The best sanctuaries," I told her, "are the ones that welcome others. Your father always said, a house only becomes a home when it opens its doors to people in need of love." He was right. Robert had always been generous that way, inviting relatives, friends, and even neighbors who needed a place to rest. That night we drove home with a new purpose and a deeper bond. We were no longer mother and daughter held together by habit or need. We were two women who had chosen each other, united by love, mutual respect, and a shared dream. Before I fell asleep, I whispered to Robert in the quiet, "We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understands what truly matters." And for the first time since he passed, I could almost hear his voice. "I always knew you would. You're both stronger than you think." Justice had come not as revenge, but as wisdom. Not as punishment, but as transformation. In the end, we gained something far more valuable than wealth. We gained an honest, unshakable love built on trust and purpose, a foundation no storm could ever destroy. Did you enjoy my story? Tell me which city you're listening from. I'd love to know in the comments. If this story touched you, you can show your support with a super thanks, so I can keep creating more heartfelt stories like this. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to read your thoughts below. And before you go, there are 2 more true life stories waiting for you on the screen. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story with love and gratitude.